to Azure when it comes SQL Server database. So we will start with the context. Context is very important because for each context you will have different solutions. As you can guess, we will continue with the migration, the deployment stuff, management. As DBA, for example, when it comes to manage a database, include me. A lot of question arise because you don't know, you can lost some habits somehow. So you will ask if you are still helpful for this kind of infrastructure. And in fact, yes, DBA is very, very, very important in the cloud as well. And we will finish with the performance topics, where I think DBA has a big added value for each company that want to move in the cloud. Okay, so the context matters, obviously. We started the project from this environment, on-prem environment, the SQL Server 2016 for the data warehouse with operating system, Win Server 2016, data center, SQL Server 2016, etc. We allocate a total of 250 gigabytes for the server, but we cap the max server memory for SQL Server instance to 100 gigabytes. All the remaining memory has been dedicated for the for analysis services in tabular mode. We have some CPUs, 12 vCPUs, and the server sits on very fast storage, a full flash and micro latency storage. Okay. Obviously, we also consider to migrate SSIS, 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 SSRS. Okay, we will talk about it in the migration section. The database is approximately 620 gigabytes at the start of the project, but now we will reach very closely the 1 terabyte of data during the COVID-19, because we are a retail company. We face a lot of an increase of the activity. Okay, online shop was a big winner of COVID-19. Okay, so we use partitioning, and this is a typical data warehouse workload with 9 very intensive nightly workload for ETL and queue processing. Okay. Why we migrate to the cloud? Okay, because I said previously, in my company we are a kind of incubator, and we adopt the principle of greenfield software development, meaning that greenfield software development means you will start each project from scratch. You don't consider your current infrastructure, you consider the big advantage is to consider new technologies. But the main disadvantage of this kind of approach is the cost, because if you start from scratch, you cannot rely on existing infrastructures. Okay, this is why we have a big willing to embrace cloud technologies, as you can guess, because the TCO may decrease a lot. It's not so obvious, but at least in some topics, it was the case. We can benefit from elastic scaling capabilities in a retail company. For example, in COVID-19 period, we run each application is a microservice on OpenShift on-prem. And during the period, we were able to scale our application by scaling the number of pods, etc. And this is what we want to achieve with the cloud. We want to benefit from elastic scaling capabilities to meet the workload period. At some time, you will have few orders, and other times you have some spike of commands, etc. Okay, we also want to improve agility. Obviously, to be agile is a very important concept in the microservices and DevOps trend, and we wanted to be more flexible with by providing some environment, for example, but obviously at the cost of a different concern. I will talk about it in the next sections. And I said previously, greenfield software will lead to increase your cost, and with the cloud approach, it's a good opportunity to minimize costs. You don't have to buy facilities, to buy servers, etc. You just have to rely on services. Okay, so migration. Okay, so the main question we had is which Azure service will fit with our needs. Okay, so the first step was to consider only the PaaS as preferred solutions. We don't exclude yes solution, but it will be used at last resort, meaning that we will for the moment at least. Naturally, we moved SSIS, SSRS with their counterpart on Azure, with Azure Data Factory, Azure Analysis Services, and Power BI. And for the database, the main driver was the machine learning service. And at the moment of the project, the only service tier and the only service that provide this option was Azure single instance, okay, with general purpose. So this we didn't consider SQL Data Warehouse or SQL in my instance for our context because they don't own ML services at the beginning of the project. I know that now SQL Managed Instance is provided ML services in preview, but it is a different price point, okay, for us. And because we have only as a starting point of the project, less than 1 terabyte single instance was a good fit for us. In terms of business continuity, we only run ETL batches and queue processing in this server. We also have some routines that send email reports after the queue processing phase. But excluding this period, we have very few requests to this server. Okay, so meaning that if the general purpose of the general purpose service tier of single database instance was a good fit for us with 4.9 here. So you have the compute here in terms of days. And even if we face an Azure region outage, because we all the stuff, all the infrastructure stuff in a BI environment is done from infrastructure as code with Terraform. I will talk about it later. We are able to provide a new environment in less than 1 day. So it's acceptable for us, including the DB restoration. Geo-replication was not a requirement, auto failover group as well, and the good thing is is accelerated database recovery is enabling by default with Azure single database. So if we have long-running queries, the rollback is very fast. Okay, in terms of availability, is very important. Serverless consideration, because with general purpose, you have the provision service tier and serverless service tier. And because the workload is a nightly workload and the remaining part of the day, we have few requests, the serverless was as a first step, I will talk about it at the end, a good solution for us because it is a burstable and pausable architecture when we we can benefit from scalability during the spike of activity. We can pause the architecture when we don't have activity. And this is very important because pausing the architecture means you have zero activity on the server. And you have to consider it when you use serverless, because if you have some activities that keep your environment running, you will pay for that, for the vCPU you are using and the memory you are using. Memory is translated in terms of memory is translated in terms of this number of vCPU in terms of billing, and we had a bad surprise in this topic in our context. Okay, so if you want to plan to use serverless, you have to be aware that some features cannot be used or will prevent to use to pause the database, like long-term backup, SQL data sync, elastic jobs, geo-replication, including auto failover group, will prevent pausing your machine. So you have to be aware of that. Here's the target architecture. So it is a usual architecture for in Azure, I guess. Okay, we ingest data from on-premise with SQL Server instances that host our core business. We also have different external data sources we ingest in staging. We have data factory with transform and load data in the data warehouse. And finally, we will have the analysis services that will be used to restitute or to enable end user to consume data from Power BI, Excel, or Excel 3. It's a custom solution we use for financial data, for financial purpose at the shop company. Okay, so you have data sources, ingestion, analysis, visualization step. In this kind of infrastructure, we meet the recommendation of Microsoft for this kind of process. Okay, so in terms of migration, we don't really got stuck in terms of migration. We had to rewrite some cross-database queries, and now it is handled by Azure Data Factory now, but we don't have any compatibility issues or blocker from migration. It's true that the DI team has prepared a lot in advance the work in order to be able to migrate to Azure, but I was not in this company at this moment. I cannot share the experience in this topic, unfortunately. We have to choose between online and offline migration because you have the two way to migrate from on-premise to Azure. We choose the offline strategy because we have an acceptable outage maintenance windows for that. Okay, the weekend was acceptable for us. So the problem was the tool we used, because we started with Backpack. Backpack will extract your data and your schema, and will then create your schema, insert data to the target. But this is definitely not the way to go if you have a big database in size. Okay, because we face a lot of timeouts. It takes a lot of times, and finally, because of the timeout, we lost a certain amount of time to assess this tool. We finally turn on DMA, that data migration assistant. For that, the data migration assistant was a good fit. It takes some time, but it was perfectly acceptable for us, and it never failed. So we use it to migrate from during the maintenance windows, the weekend of the migration. In terms of deployments, when it comes cloud, you will use API-driven approach. Okay, you will not install servers, networks, something like that, you will use API to provision network, to provision servers, to provision services, okay, in the background. So this is a natural way to go with the cloud services. And in fact, at my company, we already use this approach to deploy on-prem services. In fact, we have a module named EVA in French, mainly designed with Python language and Ansible, and we are able to provide different services. Like the service can be a web server, so we basically generate the machine from the virtual environment. We are able to provision a new virtual machine and to install the service inside. Okay, or we have to deploy components directly on OpenShift, so the Kubernetes project of Red Hat. Okay, and we are also able to provide different services like SQL Server by using Ansible playbook, for instance. But the question was how to do the same when it comes Azure services. Okay, so we have different approach. So basically, we don't like ARM template. It's your own opinion. Okay, I don't pretend that ARM template is not a good thing, but we are not confident with them at my company. We like to use PowerShell, and because we don't want to be stuck with one provider, Azure, we give us the possibility to be flexible with, for example, Azure, Google, or AWS. This is why we use Terraform for that. Okay, so Terraform has different advantages and not in this case, but we just interface what we did with module on-prem. In fact, we generate the Terraform project from Ansible, and then we deploy the Terraform project directly from resources in Azure. Just to show you very quickly what I mean. So basically, when I run my playbook, the result is this project. We have a Terraform project with a main with different files. If you are aware of Terraform, you have different files: the main file, the provider file. Which provider you will use? In this case, it is Azure. The Terraform state. Okay, the Terraform state include all the state of your infrastructures. You can share with different teams. With PowerShell and ARM templates, the state is on Azure only. So you cannot share with other teams like Terraform. Okay, and you have the Ansible playbook. We will populate variable variable. For example, we will use West Europe at the first step. It is this kind of variable we have variable, and Ansible just fulfill the corresponding variable with the correct value in order to run the project afterwards. Okay.
So David,
Yeah.
just to interrupt you a little bit, we have a small question in here.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
basically, the question that David is raising is basically you are able using Terraform that template that you are using Terraform,
Yeah.
you are allowed to deploy everything for almost any provider in cloud service. You can deploy that for Azure, you can deploy that for Google or AWS.
Yeah, this is the main advantage of Terraform. You have a lot of providers, and you are not stuck with with one provider only. This is
Okay.
Yeah, this is basically what we like with the Terraform. We have some cons, okay? Everything is not perfect, obviously. And I can anticipate my the presentation. The main problem with the Terraform is when Azure release a new feature, you have some delays with corresponding Terraform modules. You have to wait. And obviously, with PowerShell and AZ module, you don't have this kind of issue. Terraform is also a good thing to provide the base infrastructures. You have all the stuff to do that. But when it comes grain thin configuration, like SQL servers, if you want to provision advanced data security, or if you are on a virtual machine and SQL Server, and you want to configure SQL Server in a virtual machine, you don't have a lot of options. So you have to rely on PowerShell instead in this case. So you have, in fact, to use the both. And this is the main disadvantage we found by using Terraform.
Okay, so you are basically saying as a serverless solution, it's great, but for VMs inside of Azure
if
is
you want to provide VMs, if you want to provide network, if you want to provide firewall,
okay.
something like that, it's okay. You have all the stuff for that. But
Okay.
if you want to provide the SQL Server service, regarding the service you want to provide and which option you want to configure, some configuration are missed from Terraform, unfortunately,
Okay.
and you have to wait
Okay.
because you have sometimes some delays, or sometimes because the feature is in preview until the feature is not in preview, you will have the option in Terraform. But if the feature still remain in preview, sometimes you don't have choice to complete your installation with PowerShell script.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you mix both. You use basically PowerShell and at the same time Terraform.
Yeah, yeah. We currently we do. Yeah, we use it for a lot of for example SQL Server, for AKS, for API management, Azure API management, a lot of stuff. In fact, yeah. For the basic stuff, network, VPN, gateway, and some stuff like that, it's okay. Terraform is the way to go, and you will have all the stuff for that.
Okay, David. Thank you. You can continue.
Okay. So just okay, I will not go into detail of the code. It's not the focus of this presentation, but what we like with Terraform is the very declarative language. You don't have to a lot of effort to provide, for example, a resource group. You just have to declare this one. Okay, I want to provide a resource group with a provider. I define the name, location, and tags. It's very easy. Okay, for example, for database, for the SQL Server, you have this configuration. So it's a very minimal effort to provide some sort of SQL server in Azure. Okay, so and if you want to provide it, I just in my project, and you just have to type Terraform init, okay, to init the provider and to download the missing provider if it is okay. Terraform plan. So Terraform plan will command will compare your Terraform state with what he will found in Azure. And if you have nothing, you will add your resources. If you have updated your resources, obviously you will update your resources or update your resource, or you will maybe drop and recreate your resource. Your resource. You have to be aware of that. And if you want to Terraform apply, sorry. Okay, and that's it. Normally, after that, all my stuff will be deployed. Uh, yes, of course.
So, David, this is just a small question from my side.
Yeah.
Basically, even being in preview, because it was what I have understood, it's in a preview feature. You didn't have afraid to implement it in production.
No, in fact, this is a learn lesson we had. We had some feature in preview, and finally we give up for that because, for example, the best example is the machine learning service in SQL Azure, SQL DB Azure.
Mm-hmm.
The support is deprecated, and the feature will be lost.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't remember the date, and the feature is now in SQL managed instance. Okay,
Okay.
so
Okay.
and it was a strong driver to adopt SQL DB, SQL Azure DB instance. Okay, so
Okay.
it's from my experience. Now, if we have a feature in preview, we we try to not use it in production. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you are basically evolving this template that you have in Terraform.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Yeah, many. We constantly
Updating.
update it. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so let's go back to the presentation here. Okay, this is a lesson learned from using Terraform, PowerShell. As said previously, Terraform and PowerShell has advantage and disadvantage. Okay, just be aware to not if you go this way by using infrastructure as code, it's a good thing to do, but you have to avoid shadow configuration. It's very easy to do it. For example, okay, how I have to implement this, I have to change this configuration setting. You will go to the portal, change the configuration setting, and that's it. Okay, but if you are using infrastructure as code, you have to update your code with a new change. Okay, if you want to not to if you want your Terraform not to change your configuration because it will see some deviation between the configuration state and your changes, and it will drop your change. Okay, so be aware of that. And obviously, the additional skills required to use it can be more or less high regarding if you have a developer pass or not. Okay, but it's not so hard to learn Terraform, to be honest. Okay, so about management, when you deploy your infrastructures, okay, so the the first question I had when I'm going to this company was, okay, what should I do now? Do they still need DBA for that? Because in fact, the BI team and other teams were able to provide by themselves databases, change configuration, and so forth. Okay, and everything is auto scalable. Everything is managed by the cloud provider. At least this is what you can read or can hear from a lot of people, and you can ask if you are helpful in this kind of context. But the question is obviously yes. The answer is obviously yes, because no is automated, and you have a lot of added value in this context. In fact, the first lesson we have is about database backup and retention. Okay, backup rate strategy and database integrity is managed automatically by the Azure team. Okay, you don't have to do anything, and you cannot change anything. Okay, you have full backup every week, diff backup every 12 hours, and transaction log every 15 minutes. Everything is recorded in the Azure storage with a lot of availability and so forth, and replication and so forth. So okay, everything is protected in term of storage. But when it comes backup retention, you have to be aware of that. Okay, because when I started the project with the dev team and BI teams, The retention was as follows. The point-in-time recovery was 30 and 5 days. And with a long-term backup, we have backups with 10 years of retention. Okay. Now, just note that 1 day is not possible since a couple of weeks or months. I don't remember exactly. So it's a very helpful for dev and hack environment. For instance, if you refresh your prod in hack or int environment, you can change your retention to 1 day because you don't want to have retention for hack and int environments. Okay. So sorry.
David, another question.
Yeah.
Basically, is if you have an issue with, imagine that someone with a lot of thinking, a lot of fingers in the ends, and basically they drop a table or something. If you need to restore a database, how long the Azure team or the Microsoft team takes to restore your backup?
This is a very good question because the responsibility is yours. You can restore your backup by yourself, but the time it will take to restore depends, in fact, a lot of factors. Okay, the size, when you take the backup, if it is a zero backup replication or if it's a point-in-time backup, and for us, I had this kind of issues, and where I had to restore one database to restore some data, and the problem is you are not aware of the time it will take to do that.
Okay. You don't have
You don't have any TMVs. You don't have a great picture of the restore progress. Okay, I had some discussion with the Azure team, and this is in the to-do list of improvement. But I hope to get this feature very soon. The only way to have the progress information is when you copy your database, not restore, but you have the copy database, and you can you can have the information in this case. Okay.
Okay. So, but can you use pits and to restore to a certain pit on the log file using that
Yeah.
methodology? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
That's
can.
good.
Yeah, you can. You just have to put the date. Just be aware because it is an UTC date.
Yeah.
You can
Okay.
be.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to be aware to
It's a little bit different from what you are used to. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But yes, you can choose the right date until the earliest point in time recovery, obviously. But yes, you can do that then.
Thanks.
So in terms of backup prevention, just be aware of the backup storage size you will allocate, because big backup storage size means a lot of cost. Okay. The backup storage size follows this formula. You can retrieve this formula from the document online at Microsoft. Okay, so the weird thing, or the most disturbing thing, is diff backup and log backups can be unpredictable according to your workload. So sometimes it could be difficult to say, okay, my backup storage size will be 10 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, because it depends on your activity, in fact. Okay, so just to be an example for us, because we use 35 days of retention for PTR, we use 21 terabyte of data of storage for that. Okay, we just change it to 21 days, and we drop the storage size to 1.8 terabytes. And it is very important because here it is the cost management of your service. And if you focus on each on the parts, on the most part of fees in this case is the backup storage. Okay, as a step at the beginning of the project, the main costly topic was the backup storage, not the compute, the backup storage. Okay, so this is you have very be careful about that, and you have to adjust your backup strategy with your need. Okay.
Okay.
Obviously, you also have to monitor. One lesson we learn also is to monitor changes to keep cost low and to keep security under control. Okay, because you want to benefit from agility. You want to be agile. You let some permission for the dev teams or dev people or other people to create resources, but when it comes to drop resources, it is another story. Okay, because a lot of people leave their leave their resources here, and resources cost, obviously. So we had to adjust. We had to monitor that to say, okay, guy, you are using each database. You restore 600 gigabyte of data for to get data from one table, but now what happened with this database? I don't need it. Okay, just drop it, because you will pay for the storage, and you will pay for the backup. Okay, so you have this kind of consideration to have with Azure infrastructure in terms of security. From the internal audit, we use Azure SQL database features, like advanced data security is not a free features, but for us it is at least it is mandatory, because you have a lot of stuff like data discovery and classification. It is very helpful when you introduce the financial data in your data warehouse. You want to have a trace of which person get this data, etc. For auditing purpose, it's very helpful. You have the vulnerability assessment. Okay, so in every week, you have an assessment of your environment, and you can compute a baseline regarding the previous assessment. Okay, and you can adjust on fix security issues, and you have advanced threat detection. We have some interesting reports about that. For example, okay, so it is a very vulnerability assessment. Okay, so at the beginning we have a lot of risk. Okay, we obviously fix a lot of issues, and we also get this kind of report. Okay, sometimes we from on-prem environment, so we have some new connections that came and connected to the Azure SQL, and we get this kind of report to say, okay, it is expected or not. Okay, very helpful in terms of security. And for the configuration, we have a mix of Azure automation, runbook, and alerts like that. Okay, so basically we use a lot of PowerShell runbook to do that. Okay, so we push it in the Azure Git repo. The Azure Git repo, we sync the workbook with Azure automation. You have the feature for that. Obviously, we run each runbook on each of our environment, prod, hack, ints, and we get this information for key vault. Okay, for sensible information. We don't keep sensible information directly in the code. We connect with the token, and we get the info. And we also use alerts that trigger the runbook. For example, if transparent data encryption is disabled on database, is new database is created, we configure, we have a bad configuration for advanced data security, so things like that, that will trigger the runbook and will send an email to the DBA in order to fix the situation. For example, we have this kind of reports. Okay, so every schedule we have a complete assessment of our the database environment with okay, not okay, you have to fix it. Or when it is an alert, we have this kind of message. Okay, new database has been created. You have to fix it because you have often alerts now. It means that we have new database. You have to create corresponding alerts to be aware to new changes. Okay. In terms of security, you also have to consider to fix some security point, because just remember your SQL Azure database by default will be exposed in internet by the default port. Okay, so just leave your database a few minutes and you can see a lot of scans from internet. So just be aware of that. You have different features to protect your database. The firewall database or server firewall database regarding where you want to put your security. We are using mainly server level firewall because we want this every person that connect to the SQL server has access to all database by default in our regular security policies. But we leave only internal public data center IPs from my company to access this database, and we allow different Azure services to connect directly to the SQL Server database, like DevOps Azure, like IKS, Azure ML Workspace, etc. Okay. We also rely on the trusted architecture for authentication, meaning that we use Windows integrated authentication with MFA for admin connection. We use Azure Active Directory integrated for classic users. Okay, so basically a user with their Windows account can connect to the service in Azure. We use service principal mainly for different service in Azure, and if we don't have choice, we continue to use SQL user, but it's not the rule of thumb. Okay. Obviously, to use it, you have the corresponding architecture for that. You must have a MFA feature. You must have a federated domain, etc., etc. I don't go into detail of the gateway. It's not the focus here. And the next level of security is obviously the security part with login, with role, server role, user role. Just remember that you are not sysadmin of your server. You just you have some permission, but not the sysadmin permission. You can have Azure Active Directory admin. If you plan to use Active Directory, you must set up an Active Directory admin that is able to read your Azure Active Directory, and all the remaining stuff is what you know on SQL Server. Every database on Azure is a contained user database, so you can use a couple of SQL and user login, or you can use a contained user as you want. For security, obviously, we use the TDE to encrypt data. It's by default now, and you have, as said previously, you use security feature, audit feature, and Azure Monitor for the monitoring stuff. And finally, I will finish with the performance topic. Do we have some question so far, or can I continue?
Okay. Yeah, you can. For the time being, we don't have anything.
Okay.
Okay.
So let me talk about the performance topic, where I think the DBA has a very good added value. Okay, so the main lesson learned we have is performance is not only about auto-scaling stuff. Okay, a lot of people think Azure is magic, Azure or cloud is magic because you can scale, you can have elastic architecture, and it will solve your problem. But in our context, it was not the case. Okay, you still have some stuff to do as DBA. For that, you still have to maintain database state and indexes. Okay, it's still relevant. The Azure team is not under the responsibility of Azure team. You can rely on the Ola Allegrein stuff or other stuff. But the main concern will come with the scheduling part. Okay, I want to schedule my maintenance, but SQL Server Agent and database mail are gone. How we can achieve that? Okay, in fact, you have a lot of solutions regarding your context. You can have Data Factory, you can have Azure Automation, or you can rely on Elastic Database jobs. Elastic Database jobs, we don't use it because it is in preview. Okay, it's our experience, and until it is in preview, we will not rely on it. Data Factory, we leave Data Factory for BI stuff. We don't want to mix maintenance stuff and ETL stuff, okay? And we naturally rely on Azure Automation because we like the integration with PowerShell, with Git repo. It fits with our DevOps strategy, etc. So it's a very good feature for that. You have a lot of feature for a lot of history. Okay, you can have an history to see if your job is okay or not okay. You can send alerts from your runbook if something goes wrong, etc., etc. Okay, so Azure Automation in our context. But here it's my own story. Okay, so when we move the data house on Azure, the first thing they've said is, in Azure it's slower. Okay, how to speed up ETL and CUM processing? And obviously the response was, it's easy. We just have to scale your infrastructures. Okay, but the performance was not as good as expected, and the cost is not the same, because if you use 16 vCores or 14 vCores, it's not the same price. Okay, you will have more performance, at least for some parts, but the cost will not the same. And if you want to upgrade to higher performance tier, it is a different pricing story. And obviously the management was not agree with that. So we asked for solution. Can we do better? And obviously the response was yes. But you have the first solution is you can compare apples and orange in this case. On-prem, we have a very good server for the data warehouse activity, with the storage in micro latency, with a lot of throughput for max IO, max load rate, with sometimes we reach 800 megabytes per second, and the throughput is very important in data warehouse because we use a lot of sequential activity. And the fact is we used simple model recovery, and in Azure we cannot use it. This is you cannot use it, and the storage is not at the same performance level. Okay. The max IOPS in our service tier was 500 IOPS max and 30 megabytes of throughput. Okay, you cannot compare the both. Okay, in terms of CPU, it was pretty the same, but not in terms of memory and in terms of storage and in terms of recovery model.
Yeah.
In terms of scalability, okay, let's scale the infrastructure. But if you read carefully the documentation, you can see that if you scale to scale the number of IOPS, you have to scale the number of CPUs. Okay, but the transaction log will not scale as well with the number of CPU. According to the service tier you will use, you will be limited with the bandwidth, 30 megabytes per second for the general purpose tier. Okay, if you want to benefit from bigger throughput, we had to upgrade to the business critical tiers or the business critical M series tier. Okay, but again, it's not the same pricing. Okay, so and if we get some, we take a look at some performance dashboard. You have the performance dashboard provided by default on each database server, and what we got is with interesting metrics from the dashboard. You can see here that we have a very steady trend with 100% of log IO percentage used. Every metrics is in percentage of what you are able to use, okay, in terms of with your service tier. Here it's 100% of 30 megabytes per second, okay, and we also notice we get a lot of log rate governor web types. In this case, log rate governors is related to what we know on-prem with resource governor. You have some governance in terms of IO and in terms of log rates. If you want to get over the limits, the resource governor of Azure will limit you. Okay, and this is basically what it means here. You are reaching the 30% of your maximum capacity, and Azure is limiting you because you have to pay for that if you want to have more. Okay,
fair enough.
okay. So in this case, we have some concern about that. A lot of my colleagues think that automatic tuning was a magic tool and it will be solve a lot of issues, but it was not the case in reality because it did not really help for improving performance a lot and cost at the first stage. And what an interesting point is no column store recommendation was done with automatic tuning. I didn't have the response from the Azure team, but I don't think that column store is part of recommendation now with automatic tuning. So we just use column store. In fact, column store index was very helpful and recommended in this kind of infrastructure. We will see later. And we have different strategy. In short-term strategy, when we put some column store index on fact tables and we review codes, we use automatic tuning just as an helper advisor, but we don't let the automatic tuning apply automatically the recommendation. We use it like a missing index or other stuff we can get on premise. We correlate info. And the long-term strategy is to enable automatic tuning to apply automatically the recommendation, but we want to monitor it, obviously. So before we use partitioning a page can press on fact table, after we use column store index, and we get some benefits that are interesting in our environment. With Azure, remember that you are using full recovery model, meaning that you don't get minimally login capabilities, but you get column store storage, so beta compression and storage space saving. So we get a very interesting improvement in terms of space saving, more than 200 space saving at the beginning. So it's not it's a good thing because just remember that your storage will be in each backup you will have in your backup storage, your dedicated backup storage, and cost. The batch mode it's a very interesting feature provided by column store to speed up some queries. You get some SIMD instructions to process a large batch of data. So meaning that you will save some CPU consumption. Okay, so cost, just remember, and you get some login optimization if you manage to bulk insert directly in a row group. So you don't have the complete full login in the transaction log. You just have the login about compression info in the row group. In this case, it was very interesting. But just show you here what we got in this term. So we have a memory saving memory serving, data IO less than we get a reduction of more 75% of usage. So storage space is very interesting, as you can see here. And CPU was not a big improvement, but but memory was a very good point. Okay, so if you can save resource consumption, you will save your money. We get rid of the log rate governor stuff. Okay, for we don't get the log rate governor weight type. At least it will. The log rate governor was at the bottom of the top weight list. Okay, and this pattern has been transformed just some spike for the moment. And if we zoom this activity, you can see here you have sometime log IO percent is 10%, but not all the time. Okay, so meaning that the main bottleneck of this architecture was the transaction log, and we managed to reduce the contention in this particular topic. Something you can help is to optimize queries with BI teams if they are not comfortable for to performance stuff. For example, we get some before implementing column store index, they use a lot of update query from Azure Data Factory, okay, because you have a lot of built-in stuff to do update queries, okay, but it doesn't work well with column store index because this stuff will update. With update, will not get minimally login, and for you have sorry. You will have all the activity recorded in the Delta Store. Delta Store is not minimally logged, and minimally logged is not available in Azure SQL DB because you are in full recovery model once again. So we just have to work with the BI team to change the way to update. So we transform the update by delete and insert. In this case, you get directly delete is a very delete is not fully logged, and the insert directly in the bulk insert in the row group comprise structure in column store was very helpful in this case. You can see here. Sorry,
David, just a small question from my side. Basically, so far as understood, in the very beginning, you were using ADR, so Advanced Database Recovery. And even with ADR, you were basically struggling with updates on column stores?
Yeah, because ADR just
the fact.
you prevent using for fully logged operation.
Yeah, I know.
Okay?
But the way that it logs, basically, it's a little bit different, as far as I know. So basically, the deletes and inserts, or if you roll back a transaction, basically it writes the deletes and then the inserts. If we roll back, it doesn't. It stops there. Basically, you to do that. Basically, transforms that in a kind of a temporal snapshot or.
Because with ADR ADR use a lot of raw versioning mechanism.
Yeah.
So
raw version, yeah.
The paradigm is change, but it does not prevent all fully logged operation, unfortunately.
Okay. So what you have done basically is transform all the updates, or the most the ones that you were thought that it could be transformed from updates to delete and inserts. Basically, you just change that.
Yeah. Okay. Just a quick workaround to just avoid fully logged mechanism, even with ADR. Okay, because we do, and the result was pretty obvious for us because with update we reach nearly 2 hours of loading.
Yeah, for sure.
And for with the transformation, we divide by 2 the loading stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
But you also have to work with the BI team to set up some settings in Data Factory. You have the famous write batch size. You also have this with SSIS.
Yes.
And yes, we use predefined value in order to be sure we insert directly in the row group.
Okay. Okay.
And obviously, it's a DBA, purely DBA stuff. You can rely on a lot of things with SQL DB Azure. You have query store enabled by default, and we use a lot of query performance insight that rely on query store in the background to speed up the performance analysis. In fact, you can see here how we detect that the update was an issue. In the yellow bar is mainly represented the log IO weight type. Okay, you have the top 20 query by weight type log IO, and this one was pretty obvious. And in this case, obviously, you just have to see, okay, you update fact table, etc., etc. Okay, it can help. For me, it's a very interesting tool to help investigate some performance issue you can have on the SQL DB Azure. And I'm a bit late, so I will finish soon. One more lesson we learn is if you want to justify to spend time on performance, just use a cost management metric to present to the management. Okay, because for the management, the benefit will be the cost, money, to keep simple, and to justify your action. Just present this kind of dashboard. You can see here. I don't have the metric for June and July, unfortunately, but here the trend in May and June is like that, here and here. Okay, so you can we managed to reduce a lot of money for the Azure SQL DB service, so we can spend money for other things. Maybe we are considering to increase the service tier now, or we maybe to use the saving money for other services, for example. Okay. But you can see here each step. The first CCI implementation is the compute chart and is just the backup chart here. You can see here that when we change the retention, the trend drop here, and the compute here is decreasing. Just to be clear, in this case, you have an increase here. Even if we implemented the first CCI and we have some code optimization at the first step, because during the COVID period, we have a lot of activity and a lot of data unattended. We have a lot of data to ingest, and this is why without this update, this improvement, the trend will be like that. To be honest, not as smoothly as we can see here. Okay, but this tool is very efficient with when you talk about with management. And the last lesson is to continuously monitor the workload pattern. Okay, it is very, very important because your workload can change over the time, and your compute tier can not longer fit with your workload. And this is what we noticed the last months. For what we expect at the beginning of the project is this kind of trend. Okay, this is why we use serverless capabilities or service tier, compute tier. Sorry, and this is what we have now. Okay, you can see we don't have any activity where the database is in pausing mode. Okay, so in this case, serverless is definitely expensive, more expensive than using a provision tier with reservation and Azure hybrid benefit. And this is where something we are considering now, because we want to use the previous the previous license on-prem to transforming to use it in Azure, to use a provision tier with a 3-year reservation and Azure hybrid benefit. And the cost will be dropped not will be
35,
dropped to 7%. Okay,
7%. Okay.
7%. Yes, if we and the other thing we want to go through before using provision tier is to change a bit of developers and application to queries database. Okay, because developer take some habits to say, okay, we will connect to the production server to get data, or we have some reports on-prem from SSRS that queries data directly from Azure, and leading to leave the database online. Okay, but we change the way developer will ask data on Hack, for example. And we change also the way query are done from reporting service by using caching, for example, for some reports.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay, so this is my final thoughts. So if you plan to manage database in the cloud, good news, DBA role is not over. I will say more. You will be a trusted advisor for in this case. You will have a very interesting role. You can provide some recommendation. You can provide some trend. You can have a role of to provide new capabilities, new services to assist the different teams to protect or to manage their data. It's very interesting. Obviously, you will have to extend your knowledge when you for my own experience, when I began with Azure. I have to learn a lot of stuff in terms of security, Active Directory, network stuff, etc., because you have to deal with a lot of components around SQL Server. And in Azure, it's easy to provide this kind of service. So it's easy. So it is mandatory to know how it works and how you can use it in a secure fashion. Okay, so you become a kind of data engineer, not just on your DBA, because your role will be to provide the best solution to your teams to consume data, for example, data scientist or dev or application or something like that. And because cloud is something that is mostly driven by DevOps culture. In fact, my role has changed a lot in my team, because I can do a lot of stuff in a cross-functional group. I'm not just a DBA that manage databases from its desktop. I'm also part of architecture discussion with other team and BI teams, and to be honest, it's a very good opportunity to provide your added value for this kind of project. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And far as I've seen, basically, it's a great value to start to work in Azure, or mostly on the cloud, because you will have different challenge from the on-prem. Because on-prem, you can almost control everything. On Azure, you need to go deeper in terms of research in order to sort an issue with logging, everything that is related with query store. I think you will learn more stuff using Azure in the cloud. I have another question, David, and in order. I think you have finished. Just let me.
Yeah, I finished. Yes, so sorry, I'm late.
No worries, no worries. So I have one colleague that is saying that ADF with integrated SSIS if you are using ADF with SSIS.
In fact,
And he's asking if it is the reason for the 12K in terms of euros, in terms of cost.
well, I don't understand the reason of 12 kilo euros. Okay, so let me
12K in
start
terms
with
of
the first question. We use ADF with integrated SSES mode at the beginning, but we don't use it now. Okay, we transform a lot of SSES package directly in a data flow. I'm not an expert of ADF, but I know that at the beginning we move the SSIS DB on Azure and we use SSES package from ADF. But no, it's not the case now. We don't use SSIS package anymore. So you are on mute, Ivan.
Sorry, I was. But Ricardo, do you have any other question? You can potentially, I can put you as a presenter, and you can ask if you wants. Do you want to do any question, Ricardo?
No, it's just I think I saw 12,000 euros in costs for Data Factory, and for me it's a big number. So
Yeah, you're right.
You have lots of data or something. Just strange for me. Okay.
Yeah, this is another discussion, but we are also investigating to reduce the cost of ADF because it is a big part of the overall cost in Azure for us. And ADF can be, depending of which architecture you want to use. If you want to have a big scaling architecture, you will pay for a lot of worker nodes and something like that. And what we found is what we began today is when we start is to review the code of each pipeline to try to reduce the required resources for ADF, because otherwise it is a very costly service in Azure.
Okay, Ricardo, it answers your question?
Yes, it answers. Thank you.
Okay. So, David, I'm not seeing anyone making more questions, so I assume that
hope I was clear.
Everyone is enlightened. So.
Yeah. No. The topic is very huge. Okay, I was fast. Okay, because I just wanted to surface all the stuff you can face. But yes, if you have other questions, don't hesitate to reach me out. Ivan can provide the email or something like that, or you can reach me from Twitter or something like that. I can respond with pleasure. It's not a problem.
Okay, guys, just another question. I will stop the recording and basically